morning. Welcome to Hot Seat. My guest is Dr. Greg Burge from the University of Oklahoma. Dr. Burge, good to have you.
Glad to be here. Thank you, Scott. Appreciate it.
Department Chair of the University of Oklahoma Department of Economics. Did I get that right?
You sure did.
All right. So that makes you an economist, little e. And everybody's talking about the Biden student debt cancellation. It didn't cancel everybody's debt, but let's start with let's just take into account what the president's order does.
Sure. Well, it's a hot topic right now, and it's on the minds of a lot of Oklahomans. So my understanding is the order is going to forgive up to $10,000 of student debt for graduates who earn less than $125,000. It can double up to $20,000 if you're part of a couple that earns less than $250K a year.
Okay, so that's the facts about the case. Now let's get into the politics.
Yeah,
take you out into the
part,
thin ice. How does this impact Oklahoma and Oklahoma students?
Well, it impacts Oklahoma students directly. So college costs have been rising, right? This is a phenomenon over the last several decades. And, for those students who graduate with student loans, this is going to forgive up to, that $10,000. Now, is that a big part of it? College costs a lot more than $10,000, right? But this is meant to give a helping hand to students who, need that nudge to be able to afford college in that, rising cost environment, yeah.
Okay, Oklahoma students. But let's compare Oklahoma students to, say, California or New York. What kind of a deal is this for them?
Sure. Well, for an Oklahoma student, finishing up with a degree at Oklahoma State or OU or a place like that, earning $125,000 is a pretty good lifestyle here in Oklahoma. I mean, that's a pretty good income level. And that's where these regional cost differences really kind of play a role. Because if you're graduating from university in New York City, San Francisco, some of these higher cost of living areas, that income threshold is a lot more restrictive. So I see that $125,000 mark as a pretty favorable thing for low cost of living areas like Oklahoma.
All right, so this was a campaign promise by the president.
It sure was, yeah.
The Republican Party is we're in the general election, midterms. They don't like it. We've had some of our congressmen who turns out they had big loans forgiven.
Yeah.
But your thoughts about, does this add to inflation? Overall, how does this impact us now and down the road?
It certainly could impact inflation, right? I mean, you're going to be giving more purchasing power to college graduates, so they're going to be spending that money on something. So I do see the piece there where it could have an impact on inflation. I mean, the real question is it the right thing to do, right? I mean, if you're concerned about rising costs of higher education, and you're concerned about the American dream and giving, everybody, regardless of, their background, an opportunity to get that degree and start that career, then I think that there's good reason to care about these sorts of helping hand type programs. The real question is, and I think this gets into kind of the politics of it, is it the best way to approach that, right? Is it better to forgive student loans than to, say, use resources to increase Pell Grants, which are really nicely targeted to low-income youth who are going to university and who need that helping hand. And like the Pell Grant, it hasn't gone up in 30 years. The Pell Grant's the same now as it was back in the 90s when I got one. So I personally, politics aside, would think that it would be a bigger helping hand to that student who needs it if they, sort of could acquire more of those Pell Grants, those helps getting into college in the first place. I see that as a little bit more effective than forgiving loan on the tail end.
We've got about a minute left, but there is some discussion. A lot of Republicans, our delegation, some others said, we're really not getting at the root causes for all of this student debt.
Yeah, the higher costs,
Your
right.
thoughts?
Well, I mean, there's some truth to that. I mean, the cost of higher education have gone up. The services that higher education provides, has gone up. Living on campus, student activities, all sorts of different career placement services, things like that. And those are great things. Those are things that students want, but, nothing's free, and they're paying for it. So I think that there are legitimate concerns that the cost of university is rising, but I do still think it's a great investment, and it's a great investment in, in oneself.
I got 15 seconds. I'll throw a surprise question.
Sure.
Are we at peak inflation?
Yes.
Okay.
I believe we are. I don't think it'll go down quickly, but I don't think it'll go up.
Okay, it's great news. Dr. Greg Burge, thanks, nice to meet you. This is another Keith Gaddy help for me to meet you from the University of Oklahoma.
It's my pleasure to meet you, Scott. I really enjoyed it. Yeah.
Thanks for being
here
so
today.
much. See this again at news9.com/YourVoteCounts and follow me on Twitter @MitchellTalks.